Alô? Esse último intervalo do
Good
evento
afternoon.
é sempre
The
intervalo
last
alongado,
interval,
independente do que aconteça.
the last break, right, tends to take longer than
Mas agora,
expected.
finalizando
Anyway,
a
finally,
programação
we are
do
ready
seminário
to
do
start
Observatório
our
Brasileiro de
last
Inteligência
panel
Artificial
of
e
the Brazilian
nessa
Observatory
sequência
of
de 3 dias que
AI.
tivemos de eventos, nós
We've been
teremos
here
o
for 3
painel
days,
Inteligência
and
Artificial
finally,
Transformando
we are here to
Trabalhos e
talk
Empregos.
about
Eu
AI
gostaria de chamar,
transforming
para
work
iniciar a
and
composição da
companies.
mesa,
I
o
would like
moderador
to invite our moderator, Marcelo
da PUC São
Graglia.
Paulo.
He is from the
Por
University, Pontifical University in São Paulo, PUC.
Em seguida, se chama a mesa
Let me
Alceli
also
Barroso,
invite
do Toronto
Alceli
Business
Barroso.
College.
She is with Toronto Business College.
Continuando a composição da mesa, chamo Atahualpa Fidel Coelho,
Atahualpa
pesquisador
Fidel Coelho, who is a researcher of IEA in the University of São Paulo.
Chamo, em seguida, Roseli Fígaro,
Roseli
do
Figaro,
Centro de Pesquisa em
she is
Comunicação
from
e
the
Trabalho,
Research Center in
da ECA
Communication
USP.
and Work, also University of São Paulo.
Teremos também online
We have
Álvaro Acomin,
online with us Álvaro Comin with FFLCH, University of São Paulo,
e Morgan Frank,
and
da
Morgan
Universidade
Frank
de
from the
Pittsburgh.
University of Pittsburgh.
Agradecendo a presença.
Thank you all very much for being here with us. I would like now to hand it over to Marcelo, our moderator. Thank you, Pedro. Good afternoon, everyone.
Bom, primeiro me apresentando rapidamente,
Let
eu
me
sou
introduce myself. I am a professor here at the University Pontifical Catholic University in São Paulo. I am a coordinator of the PhD and master programs of digital technologies. And as part of the program, we created the Observatory of the Future of Work. I'm here representing this initiative together with Atahualpa and Roseli. We have been contributing to this topic related with artificial intelligence, digital technologies in the job market. Thank you very much, Tuca, Alexandre, Demi, all of them part of the journey with OBIA, the Brazilian Observatory of AI. We've also been involved with the Ministry of Labor, to talk about the future of jobs in Brazil.
Quem mais está conosco? Rapidamente. Então, aqui ao meu lado, Atahualpa.
Just next to me, we have Atahualpa. He is a researcher in the Institute of Advanced Studies, University of São Paulo. He is the group of artificial intelligence and work. He is also a researcher in the research group of digital transformation and society in my university. He is the director of international relations and international affairs of the Institute. He is a specialist of new technologies and human rights of the Institute of Public Policies and Human Rights of Mercosur. He's also a consultant of AI in the regional office of UNESCO for Latin America and the Caribbean.
O professor que está remoto, Álvaro Comin.
He is a professor of the Department of Sociology of the Department of Physiology, Language and Human Science of the University of São Paulo. He is a researcher of C4AI of University, where he manages a research study in work and AI. He is part of a group with Society and Social Research of the Brazilian Center of Analysis and Planning called CGI.br, where he was the chairman between 2005 and 2008.
Também conosco o professor Morgan Frank,
We have
professor
Morgan Frank, assistant professor of the School of Computer and Information in the University of Pittsburgh. Professor Frank is interested in the complexity of AI, future of work, and socio-economic impacts of technology changes. Professor Frank has his PhD in Media Lab, MIT. He is postdoc in MIT and ID, and he has his master in applied mathematics in the University of Vermont. Professor Roseli Figaro, next to me. She is full professor of the University of São Paulo, faculty of the Graduate Studies in Science of Communication. She is the coordinator of the Research Center in Communication and Work in the activities of communication and arrangements of communicators supported by the funding institutes here in São Paulo. She's a member of CNPq and a researcher of the International Observatory of Artificial Intelligence.
Também Alceli Barroso.
Barroso. She has her PhD and her master in biochemistry, University of São Paulo. She is a professor of Toronto Business College. She is the director of business development of the Federal Association of Canadian Brazilian Business and a consultant of AI of Voice Sem Asas. She has been an assistant at ABM, providing consulting services, and she's a leader of the Future of Work, Brazilian Association of Software. She is part of the study group of Digital Transformation and Society in my university and the Observatory of the Future of Work. I have a script, and I don't want to lose track of what I would like to say.
O nosso painel,
has had as its mission to address two very important aspects of digitalization and expansion of AI. First, digital transformation involving companies, organizations in general. And the second topic are the challenges for the employment market, for workers. These are, let's say, the two sides of the same coin, topics that have to be addressed for the future of our country when it concerns AI, and we are going to try to address those two aspects during our panel.
Todos e todas devem saber, né? A gente tem basicamente, podemos dizer que temos as pessoas mais pessimistas, né, que têm uma visão mais catastrófica.
Maybe some pessimistic people who have a very catastrophic understanding of AI in the employment market. But certainly, there are also optimistic people. Some people that think that everything will run smoothly, there won't be any other problems, as the past has shown us. And I would like to quote Ariano Suassuna, who used to call him a hopeful, realistic person, is a Brazilian writer. Time has taught us to think about risk, to have risk in our minds, trying to create scenarios, including the worst-case scenarios.
Há esse pensamento de
que this understanding that everything has gone fine with previous technological revolutions, computers and others, I think there are two mistakes there. That's my own opinion, of course. One which is more of a philosophical side of it. The future repeats the past. Second point concerns the technical aspect of technology. When we think about internet, well,
fosse melhor definida como uma
Internet
plataforma
could be
tecnológica
defined
do que
as a
uma
technological
tecnologia
platform, much more
singular,
than
né? Estrita.
technology per se.
E plataformas, sejam elas
And
estruturais,
platforms,
biológicas,
regardless of being
são
structural
espaços
or
onde se
biological,
colocam
are
coisas em
spaces
cima
in
para
which
coisas
you can place
florescerem, né?
things on top and
Então,
things
a
would
internet em
flourish,
si,
so
para
to speak.
cada
But
emprego que ela
Internet,
eliminou, por
for
exemplo, ela gerou
each
3 ou
job
4.
that
Então,
it
nesse
has
aspecto,
eliminated, it has generated 3 or 4
foi
different
positivo,
jobs.
né? Tem outras
It was
questões, óbvio, a serem
positive.
discutidas, mas
Of
foi
course, there would
positivo.
be other
A
sides
inteligência
of
artificial
it
já
to
tem
be
uma
discussed.
característica bem
AI,
diferente, né?
in turn, has a different
É uma
characteristic.
tecnologia que claramente, do
AI
ponto de vista do
is a
trabalho, ela
technology
tem
that
uma característica de substituição. Né?
tends
Muitas
to
das virtudes são
replace
ligadas a
workers,
desenvolver possibilidades que ou não são
developing
possíveis
possibilities
para humanos fazerem
that
ou que
wouldn't
humanos
be
não conseguem
performed
fazer de
by
forma tão
humans or that
eficiente. Né? Então,
humans
acho que a
cannot
gente
do
não
as
pode
efficiently.
ter uma visão ingênua e não
So
nos
I don't think we
prepararmos,
should
né,
be
para
naive.
eventualmente
We really have to get prepared
cenário
for
de impactos
a
negativos.
situation
Tem
where
também
there
o
would be
argumento de
negative
que
impacts.
os ganhos de produtividade
There is
podem
also
estimular
an argument that
crescimento econômico,
productivity
pode gerar
gain
novos
would
negócios
lead
e
to
assim gerar
economic growth, new
novos postos de trabalho.
businesses, and that would
Mas
end
também a
up
gente precisamos
taking
ficar
to new
atentos
job
às
positions.
mudanças na
But
produtividade da mão
we
de
have
obra,
to
né,
pay
na
attention
relação
at the
entre as
productivity
empresas que
of our
estão
labor
empreendendo o processo de
as
digitalização e
companies that
mesmo
are
as
going into
startups que
the
já nascem
digital
com o
process, and
DNA de
also
tecnologia, né?
startups that start with that
Claramente
DNA
elas
of
não desenvolvem apenas
technology.
produtos
They
tecnológicos,
do not
elas já
develop only
desenvolvem
technological process.
processos
They also
digitais
develop
e assim tem uma
digital
relação de
process.
produtividade da mão de
Therefore,
obra
the
diferente daquela
productivity
que nós estamos
of labor
acostumados.
seems to be different
Bom,
from what we are used to
coloquei
dealing with.
slide só para uma provocação
There is
inicial,
one simple,
antes da gente
one first slide to serve as
abrir,
food for
né,
thought.
as questões aqui. Eu coloquei só
Before
alguns
I
dados
invite our speakers
do Fórum
to make
Econômico
their
Mundial e da
inputs.
Brascom.
Some data about Brascon and the World
Quando a gente olha
Forum,
os números, né? Aliás, os números a gente tem que olhar sempre com certo
and numbers
certo
should
cuidado.
always be carefully considered.
A gente tem ali saldo, né, negativo de
There is a
14
negative
milhões
balance
de
of
empregos
14
gerados, né?
million generated jobs,
Isso,
according to WEF,
segundo o Fórum Econômico,
the World Economic
seria algo
Forum.
em torno de 2% da força
About
de trabalho
2%
mundial,
of the
então a gente pode pensar, o
workforce.
impacto não é tão grande assim, né?
Not that much impact, you
Eu
might
acho que o
say.
aprendizado que nós temos que ter em relação a esses números é o
But
seguinte:
we have
não
to
é
learn
uma
the
conta de
following from
subtração.
these numbers. It's not a subtraction
Se a
that
gente
we
olhar o
have to
primeiro
make.
número, que é uma
If we
expectativa
analyze
de
the first number,
23%
an expectation of
de mudança ou
23%
de movimentação de
of
postos de trabalho, acho que esse número é um número
jobs
que a
to
gente tem
be
que olhar com mais
changed,
atenção.
this is the
Pegando o
number that
exemplo
matters.
do Brasil aqui, né,
Let me
onde a
give you an
gente,
example in Brazil.
apesar do país ter conseguido uma redução
Even though the
expressiva no
country
índice de
has had a
desemprego
significant reduction
nos
in
últimos tempos, ainda
unemployment
assim nós
rates
temos coisa
in
de
recent
7
years,
milhões e meio de pessoas
there is still
desempregadas e nesse
7.5
momento
million
nós
people
temos
who are
dezenas de milhares
unemployed.
de vagas na
And
área de tecnologia
at the same time, there
abertas
are
no
lots
Brasil
of
que as empresas
jobs
têm
opportunities in
dificuldade de
technology in
preencher,
Brazil that cannot be
porque não dá
taken
o
by
match,
anyone
né?
because there is
Ou
no
seja,
match.
não é
There
uma
is
conta de
not
números. Então, eu acho que
qualified
nessa questão do mundo do
workforce.
trabalho, assim como a própria IA,
And
a gente não pode pensar que,
I don't
no
think
geral,
we have
vai
to
ser
have
bom.
that
Acho que não, esse
simplistic
pensamento é absolutamente
understanding that,
equivocado. Acho que, ao
well, in
mesmo
general,
tempo, virão
everything
coisas
will be
boas,
fine.
e ao mesmo
There'll be
tempo
good
virão
things,
coisas
but there will
indesejadas,
also
e a gente
be
precisa trabalhar
undesirable
com
effects.
as
And we
duas,
have to
com as
be
duas
able to
questões, né?
deal with them
No
both.
número ali da Brascom, né, é
According
desafio que
to
nós
the
temos
data
hoje
of
chamado
Brascom,
gargalo de mão de obra
there is a
no Brasil, e
bottleneck
isso não é
of
pouco importante, porque
labor
isso pode
in
impactar
Brazil,
nas possibilidades de
and it
desenvolvimento
may
econômico a
impact
partir
economic
do uso da
development
IA e outras
once
tecnologias.
AI and other technologies start being used.
E aqui tem duas questões,
And there are
né,
two main issues to be
fazendo
considered here.
comentário rápido. É que claramente
On one
capacitação e
side,
recapacitação
capacity
é uma ação
building,
importante, é uma ação que está prevista,
retraining
inclusive, no
are
Plano Brasileiro de
important,
Inteligência
and that's
Artificial.
part of the
Aliás, um plano
Brazilian
muito bem estruturado, muito abrangente,
the
né?
Brazilian
aumento
the Brazilian
da
plan
elaboração
of
desse plano.
AI. quite a good plan, actually. But we have to be careful about what we call just make, let's say, an apparent qualification. People pretend to be qualified and they are not actually. And secondly, solutions for problems brought by technology won't necessarily be solved by technology alone. We cannot simply replace labor by having more qualified people in AI. There will be other productive sectors, especially those that are labor intensive. Well, these are just my initial comments so that we can start our discussion. And let me tell you how we are going to work. Each of our panelists will have 10 minutes to drawing initial comments. We've talked before and aligned to some extent what everyone would address. So I'm going to ask Alceli to go first. She's going to talk about the perspective of organizations, digitalization, use of AI, and some of the challenges that companies have been facing in this new world.
Hello, good afternoon. It's a great honor to be here. After 2 years without visiting Brazil, I am really moved to be here today. My background with AI, my education is totally different. It is in health. But back in 2011, when I was already working in technology for IBM Tech, I was introduced to AI, which was I was introduced to Watson. I mean, that was a new novelty, and I became curious. What is that? And then I started learning more about that. 6 years later, we had already cases of use of that technology in health, in education, in automotive sector, even in art and culture. And that became more and more present. And I was working in education at that time. And I asked myself, are people prepared for that? Do companies have people for that goal? There were some cases of use. Who will develop that within the companies? Will there be any scalability? And back then, I met Marcelo, and we were so curious to know how companies were dealing with that. So we interviewed professionals from HR to understand if their feelings was that there was a shortage of labor force and if companies were ready or not. And then they just, replied, we lack of data, of base structure, but at the same time, companies, they don't have within their own companies a support area to guarantee this ability. At that time, I was working together with companies, helping with AI, cybersecurity, cloud, data science, as everything, after all, is intertwined one to another. Once cloud became somewhat new in 2011, when Watson was released, Watson was not related to the web. I remember people saying, the computer did that without accessing the internet. Today, we have everything stored in the cloud, in the data centers. But this is another stuff. How much energy are we consuming? If companies, they are able or not to upload enough data volume. And this is how we are measuring as small and medium-sized companies in the use of algorithms, or just large companies can cope with that. Anyhow, while in the meantime, everything was not so much developed. After that, many companies released their own systems, badge certificates, micro badge certificates. But still there is a way to go. And I agree when Marcelo says, at what extent, or better saying, at what level do we need to know about AI? Well, all professionals, everyone needs to understand at what rate a crash course will give you enough information to be able to work with that coming technology in a level that you feel comfortable about or not, and what is the necessary base that we'll need to have as of now to be able to live up with, the present. We have many aspects to be discussed, but last year when generative AI showed up, it became a democracy, and now people can see throughout a friendly type of interface, we are able to see things happening. We ask and they answer us back. If they answer us correctly, this is something else, but at least there is an interaction, allowing people to understand and to get everybody on the same book. And now the question is, do companies have a strategy to deal with all of that innovation? In the past months, I heard many people say that a business leader called the tech leader and said, well, we have to deploy AI. And the tech leader said, but what for? And then the other guy said, I don't know, everyone is doing it. We have to do it as well. We cannot be lagging behind. So that feeling that everybody's doing it, so I also have to do it, like, copy and paste, we have to be judicious in our reasoning. And companies mainly have to ask themselves, why, what for, do I need it, and how if I need it. And within artificial intelligence, which is a huge area of field, there are many tools, and which tools are good for which processes. So to have, that skill or that judgment to decide when AI is necessary, when not. Maybe another analytic tool may work, and a data scientist will be able to do that without necessarily going to AI. To be able, to set marks between what AI is really good for and why not. And the company's strategy where they will requalify or not their tools and future decisions is very important. AI is kind of, seductive. It came with all this seduction that it would improve productivity in a short time. And that means to deploy technology and cut costs and cut people. So this is why I say recruitment, recollocation. And what can I do with that person that used to perform or to develop an A job to now switch to a B job? How can I go with this journey transfer? And here I see two components. I am very optimistic that technology, yes, it increases productivity, it adds innovation, we are able to do things faster and better, but conversely, we have a human side of it. A Harvard Business Review article published recently an article saying, how can we produce more human-type leaders? How can AI bring or add more humanity to our leaders? This is our pursuit. It's useless to have a very efficient company with employees who are extremely unhappy. There are collaborators with mental health issues, burnout, spending fortunes in new contracts, because this is what it happens. People, they leave, and then you have to recontract someone, which ends up being more expensive than the internal turnaround in the career. And how can we as a society find a good balance, a fine-tuning for promoting careers? And there are several articles showing that people are very afraid of AI. They don't even know exactly what AI is and what they should really fear of, but they are already kind of anxious because they feel they may be replaced very soon. And companies, in my opinion, they should invest more in the development of their collaborators to allow a more pleasant environment, safe, with technology serving at our side, technology taking the best of human beings. In the future, within this whole scope of algorithms, it may even, add some critical capacity. I believe that those tools, they will be able to do that. But the judgment, the refining, the perception, compassion, everything that we have, which is part from our emotional side, if we take emotional, which is single to human beings, plus AI, then I believe we'll be able reaching a balance and a narrative of AI as a way to support people. Thank you. That's it from my side. Thanks.
Professora Roseli.
Professor Roseli.
Assim.
Bom, gente, boa tarde, muito obrigada.
Good afternoon, and it's a great honor to be here. You are very brave. You have been here sitting for the whole day, but please be patient. I have a 15-minute text which I'd like to read. So I have to, cope here with some order. Questions to an AI observatory. So this is the opening of my saying, and I am here a labor perspective. Human work is always good and new, and it's the only one able to innovate. Techniques, instruments, and tools, they are products of human work to overpass the environmental difficulties and to improve quality of life. As Álvaro Pinto, a philosopher, says, technology is the field of knowledge which encompasses technical development. Technological development is social actions under dispute, which results are empowered by those who are wealth. There are a number of questions to be asked in a way to change that ideological speech, which seems to be the only way to what might have several directions. Why should we name words like cloud, AI, machine learning, system work, etc., algorithmic operational process based on data? All these terminologies, they are possible due to human actions. And why do we use such terminology? Machines don't work. Machines don't learn. We have to be careful with the old-fashioned vocabulary. These verbs are important for human actions, the effects that they produce once they are used to name operations of instructions, mathematics, and others. They may be hindering the choices that are being made by some human beings as if they were neutral operations, objective operations as a result of a machine which has no interest, neither ideology. This is a main problem. For instance, it prevents the main role of some layers of the population which do not see themselves capable to understand such a demystifying speech. Clouds are heavy devices which occupy territory they consume, water, energy, and millenniums. Data centers are plants, IT infrastructures to build up solutions and services to store data and manage data so that can be used and reused. The large companies in the sector are Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft. They have the monopoly.
Elas monopolizam. Opa! Uma professora de mais de 60 anos.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the comments she made. It was outside the mic.
Elas monopolizam de maneira
vertical. They have the monopoly of the AI value chain, offering services of infrastructures, platform, softwares. In São Paulo City, we have data centers from these three large companies, in addition to some other operators and companies who are specialized in its management and development. They are placed on the water basins of our country. The water management of the state requires complex management and under much dispute. The energy which is generated for the cooling of the system is key. Those plants, they have a more qualified task force, however, not well known in terms of their work conditions and salaries. According to an expert, some of the profiles are data centers engineers, data center managers, data center analysts, technicians, among all others. The salaries of technicians are quite low. They get around $1,000 monthly at most. And as how data is produced and they get to the storage, data is the fundamental base for contemporary techniques for generative AI. And they rely on communication and labor relationship. Data is present in our social life, in the communication relationships, and all the outcomes that will allow the interactions with those devices. Outside the communicational field, data, they doesn't mean much. There are a dog, a pen, a rain, or something else can just be understood because they become a product of social relationships. The supply chain follow-up from its beginning until the data center requires appropriated regulation, which has to rely on the business models which sell data and profile analysis for those who pay more. In the markets, we find flexible delivery service, data delivery services. There are several agencies and employees working in that business. And who are they? How are they framed? How is the business framed? It is framed, it acts, and it becomes legal. How come? Therefore, the supply chain of AI involves mining, management of resources such as water, energy, civil construction, logistics, and social interaction as data is captured from the society. A great number of collaborators are part of the site. cycle. It's necessary to regulate and to pay properly millions of Brazilians who are not seen nowadays, and they are seen as a residue or a subtract of those large companies. And by that, I mean data, no, right node, right takens. And they are involved in the whole system. They give feedback, which allows to improve a model after it is released. They are paid just a few cents, and they work at really weird places without any feasible conditions. Reports had proved that the chat GPT was trained by Kenya workers in really bad working conditions. Other countries in Asia and South America, this number of employees, they keep growing with different profiles, but what makes them similar is their need for survival without having their needs met, no recognition, and no salary guarantee. Women, they are a very important share of this exposition. They are exposed to toxic of their mental health. There is no guarantee they may wait for hours to perform a task or to perform them in a hurry without getting paid. In that value chain, there is a key aspect for data capture, from the internet connections to the access to apps which will allow such a collection. But yet, this structure is totally monopolized. Tools, they offer services, but their final mean is to grab people's attentions. And for that, people need to be, they have to be persuasive, and that's what they do. In that way, we have publicity and journalism, which are two key products to feed the machine that will collect later. Qualified information is important to make that scenario clear. They end up selling detailed profiles by different sectors of the market. Is the advertised that is promoted by Google Ads and Meta.
Some of the professionals that are involved are artists and cultural producers, and many content producers and digital influencers, which are professions that have been profoundly transformed, losing the ethos that identify them, such as journalists. It is haunting communication professionals, artists, cultural professionals. These professions are losing their characteristic of original what they were, because now we have content producers only. Creativity of these professionals have become AI input. We have to emphasize above all that data, as they are captured, they feed different bases for different purposes, such as data on health, have a specific purpose. Data coming from the work of communicators also has a purpose. Accurate information has additional quality, is a product that attracts more audience. The process of work of journalists becomes digital tools that replace workers and or speed up workers' performance. Newsrooms are empty. Advertising agencies have lost their nature. Now they are working on the logic of Google Ads tools. Therefore, advertisers, especially media workers, are working just for the ecosystem of the company. These are just some examples. We have to identify, map, and think about viable solutions for the future of decent work. And this is a very important task, which can be done by the Observatory. Therefore, the Observatory could have the purpose of mapping the supply chain of advertising in Brazil from the characteristic of work. Work can combine the interest of different sectors of this contemporary industrial escalade. Data producers, or everybody that interact through the internet, people who work in this value chain, robust infrastructure required to produce and manage data, and the natural resources for the operation of infrastructure, as well as for the players with economic power to make decisions. Understanding and respond to the challenges that are being posed require a critical reasoning that is committed with the well-being of people. Science should have this commitment.
Obrigado, professora. Na verdade, esse painel,
Thank you.
acho que você já percebeu, ele traz
This
mosaico
panel,
de perspectivas.
as you realize, it brings a mosaic of perspectives, because it's such a complex topic, isn't it? Let me invite now Morgan Frank to make his comments and tell us about his studies in the topic. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so hopefully you all can hear me and see my screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So thank you so much for this opportunity to tell you about some of my thoughts on how we might do better understanding the labor implications of AI, and in particular, do a better job understanding the negative labor implications of AI. So there's been a lot of energy and excitement about what generative AI and tools like ChatGPT and image generators will mean for white-collar jobs all across the world. Here to highlight this concern, I've pulled a couple headlines from some notable news sources. So for example, a headline from CNN Business, Business Insider, and Forbes magazine on the left-hand side all highlight the potential for ChatGPT to destroy jobs. CNN Business says that 300 million jobs in the US could be affected by the latest wave of AI. However, if you start looking more and more, what you'll find is even among the high-level, very reputable sources for business insights and technology trends, there's still a lot of confusion. On the right-hand side here, I've highlighted two news headlines, one from The Atlantic and another from Business Insider, that were published just a few weeks apart with an entirely opposite sentiment. The headline from The Atlantic says how ChatGPT will destabilize white-collar work, while the headline from Business Insider a few weeks later says ChatGPT is the MySpace of AI. It's fun, but it's far from taking your white-collar job. So, who's right? Should we be worried? If AI is going to take jobs, which jobs and where in the world, where across the US, where in the economy? That is, which sectors will workers be most affected? All of these headlines, and actually a lot of studies on how AI or technology shape the future of work, are motivated by job loss. And several studies actually try to estimate which occupations, which types of workers are most exposed to AI, but no connection is ever made in the data to actual lost jobs. Usually what's going on is that we understand that new technology very frequently alters the demand for skills within an occupation. That is, I used to have to write out math by hand, but now that there's good computer programming that can solve math problems for me, the need for me to solve those problems by hand is replaced by the technology, frees me up to do other things. So that means that some workers who are able to adapt to those changes might be made more productive by new technology, including new technology like generative AI. However, this need not be the case for everybody. Sometimes workers will fail to adapt to these within occupation changes, leading to a job separation, which is a worker quits their job or is fired by their employer. And sometimes those job separations will lead to technological unemployment, when the worker who experiences that job separation is unable to quickly find their next employment opportunity. Now, all these three bins all represent different types of job disruption and potentially negative outcomes for workers, but each of these bins is unfortunately very understudied, in part because, at least in the US, the type of data that's available across the whole US economy to describe these three different labor outcomes is not sufficient to answer the question. For example, if you wanted to study within occupation skill change over time, you could look to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics ONET database to look at how skill profiles for U.S. occupations are changing over time. But this database is updated, each occupation is updated only every 5 years. So you're not getting a lot of temporal information. You could look to another survey, the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey from the BLS, if you wanted to look at monthly total job separation rates by each US state. However, these job separation statistics are not broken up by industry or by the type of occupation from which workers are experiencing these job separations. Finally, the BLS gives you the Local Area Unemployment Statistics Survey, or LAUS, which gives you monthly total unemployment rates for each US state and even for individual US cities over time. But again, these total unemployment statistics are not broken up by industry and not broken up by the type of worker who's experiencing those unemployment. So it's really hard to connect these negative labor outcomes to the source of their disruption, whether it be from AI or any other source. I think that in the US and across the world, countries need to bolster the types of data that we use to understand negative job outcomes and provide that data at scale. That means across different regions in each country and across different sectors in each country's economy. In the US, one of the things that I'm doing with my research group to try to bridge this gap is to actually work with each US state's unemployment insurance program to send us data on the most recent occupation of everybody who claims unemployment benefits in the US each month. This allows us to pick a state and a month, for example, and say, if you, worker, tell me your occupation, I will tell you the probability that you claim unemployment benefits. And I'm calling this probability of unemployment risk. This is a step forward from those aggregated BLS statistics because unemployment risk varies by occupation and by sector. It varies by state and it varies over time. And so unemployment risk actually gives us the potential to see when there's a sudden change to the economy. For example, ChatGPT is suddenly launched. What types of workers experience an increased likelihood of unemployment as a result? These types of insights are really valuable in the US economy, at least, and reveal some surprising and counterintuitive results. So for example, you might just expect that using the usual employment statistics that are much more common in different countries' departments of labor, that you could just do as good of a job looking at just those employment statistics. For example, you might assume that if employment is rising for an occupation, unemployment risk should be falling for workers of that occupation. But here, what I'm showing you is that's not always true, at least for certain groups of workers across US states. In the top left, you'll see that for computer and math workers in the state of Nebraska, their employment and unemployment risk rose at the same time. For management workers in the state of New Hampshire, there's actually no detectable relationship between the change in employment for management workers and the unemployment risk experienced by workers. You might say, well, maybe each state's total unemployment is really driving the overall trend, which is to say that whatever unemployment risk individual workers in a state are experiencing is driven by systemic factors rather than occupation-specific details. But again, total unemployment rate is not often a good predictor for individual occupations' unemployment risk. In the top right, for example, life, physical, and social science workers in the state of Wisconsin experience rising unemployment risk while the total unemployment rate in the state of Wisconsin steadily declined. Another way to see the usefulness of this data is to look at these two maps. Here I'm looking at total unemployment rate in green in each US state in March 2020. So this is while COVID social distancing policies were applied across the US. You can see that there's sort of a general greenness to the whole map. And right on the red map, we're looking at the unemployment risk for healthcare support workers across the US. And here you can start to see that there is actually some detail there. So if you wanted to focus resources from the government to the workers who are experiencing the most job insecurity from COVID social distancing policy or from generative AI or some other labor disruption, this detailed unemployment risk gives us a new perspective to help target resources to the specific classes of workers who really need our help. Here, for example, what we're doing is using off-the-shelf measures for AI exposure by occupation to try to predict which workers will experience unemployment risk or increased total unemployment rates based on a state's total exposure, increased job separation rates, or within occupation skill change. And what we find across these different analyses is even after controlling for some generic things like the skill requirements of an occupation or where in the country a labor market is located, including information about workers' exposure to AI improves our ability to predict each of these negative labor outcomes for those workers. So this is to say that it indeed seems that with the benefit of detailed unemployment risk data, workers are experiencing unemployment risk in a way that would be predicted by exposure to AI. So with this, let me just highlight, we're interested in my lab at the University of Pittsburgh. We're interested in continuing this work on how technology is shaping the demand for specific skills, how unemployment risk is distributed across workers, across sectors, across counties, and across cities. And we're hoping to combine this unemployment risk data with even more detailed data on individual workers over the course of their career. Finally, I'm thankful that I'm able to participate in this event remotely. My wife and I have a 10-month-old baby, and I didn't want to stay away for too long. And with my child in mind, I start to wonder what will happen with AI and the future of education as we start to prepare today's students for the work of tomorrow. And with that, I'll wrap up.
Obrigado, professor. Muito interessante o estudo apresentado.
Thank you, Professor. Very interesting study. It's a shame that we have such a short time for a longer debate. Next, Professor Álvaro Comim, please.
Bom, vamos lá, né? Muito obrigado pelo convite.
Thank you for the invitation.
A pessoa do Pedro. É prazer estar aqui.
It's a great honor to be here and to be able to share this discussion with all of you.
O debate sobre os impactos da IA sobre o trabalho, ele tem
AI impacts over labor, which is also related to climate change. Recently, they even would refer to a future perspective. And today they would be just trends, but that's not quite the fact. Lately, we have to acknowledge that we are already living that future, as global warming is part of our daily routine, and we feel that this information technology process, where AI is also a very important component, has also led to a number of changes in the marketplace. I will start from when Professor Morgan ended his talk. Studies, they try to forecast about the future of the market, the labor market, if there will be a shortage of jobs or not. But we know that some professions are changing, and the content of many professions are being changed. What professionals used to do traditionally, they no longer can keep on doing exactly the same way they used to. And we also know that some of those providers who will lose their jobs are not necessarily the same providers or employees that will be ready to grab a new position with the development of all these technological tools. So this technological change, allows us to think about a job skills. In the academy, we try to associate personal skills to school backgrounds, educational backgrounds. The more diplomas or certificates you have, the more skilled we suppose that that collaborator will be able, or the higher the worker revenue, the higher will be its yield, and the better will be the skills and qualification. And people from HR knows that skills, it's not just a matter of knowledge or educational background. Everything that we say to be just labor, work, and not well skilled, they all involve some sort of abstract thinking. Even a constructor who will build up a house, he has to think about the house in his mind before he starts peeling up the bricks. So the fact that there are just, physical jobs, that is a false ideology. Skills are usually acquired within time and experience. And in many cases, professionals, they require talent. Some people have them, some don't, and we don't know if that is an inhale, if that is an inborn talent or not. And there are those so-called social skills, which are skills which may be shown in the way people relate to others, how they relate their attitudes and personality. If you talk to HR people, we understand that the so-called soft skills usually are the skills that HRs consider to be the most difficult ones to find in the market. It's difficult to fulfill the soft skill requirements. You may find easily a good software developer, but it's very hard to find a software developer who will have, that business feeling, that will be able to work as a team or to be a leader of a team. These are, rare people to be found, and that doesn't have to do with like educational background, but rather with the social processes that we have followed and acquired since our childhood. Well, AI and work. We are talking here about what? Automation. One of the main attractives of these technologies is that they allow automation, task automation. And what is kind of new with artificial intelligence is that it allows task automation. Tasks which we believe are highly qualified activities, which we associate to just to those people who are able to perform really high skilled tasks. Managers, for example. Managers, they are facing a decline in the past years. That is also a factor to Brazil, because if we compare the past 10 years, we are going to see that this is a category that is going down, is in a certain decline, and artificial intelligence sometimes works to replace the boss and not the regular employee. For instance, in the service sector, publicity and advertisement, traditionally speaking, it encompasses a number of occupational activities which require high qualification: a marketing professional, an advertiser, which involves a number of professionals such as photographers, voiceover providers. And with the advertisements now moving to social media, a great majority of this type of service is being carried out by influencers, TikTokers, YouTubers, and other social characters. And those non-professionals, sort of speaking, they are carrying out a work which before was conducted by the advertisers company. Some of those influencers, they have no specific educational backgrounds. Some, they even work without getting paid, or they are paid without, having no graduation or whatsoever. And TikTokers, they are just everywhere. In the audiovisual sector, And let's not forget about a while ago, we had a strike in New York in the movie sector, and some of those and those employees, they were being they like all this the translations and everything, they were being done by AI, and they were called to revise because it was not lawful. Translators, the name of the translator comes right down the author's name with a status that would be very closer to the author's status, and translation services, they have been replaced by programs that are of easier access. So on one side, we have all these skills which are losing social value, not just monetary value, but also social symbolic value. On the other hand, the automotive companies, they are suffering a great deal to develop trucks which are able to move autonomously, I mean, without the driver. Companies are finding it very difficult to replace a driver. And let's be honest, a truck driver is a profession which we usually associate to an average skills, if so, like middle level. Most truck drivers in São Paulo, they don't even finish secondary school. Why is it so difficult then to replace truck drivers, and why is it so difficult to turn the truck automated? Because his work is not as simple as we would think. As a matter of fact, it's a very complex one. It involves a permanent use and attention of the senses, vision, listening, and a number of understanding about engine and also traffic. And not everyone will know how to do it. It's totally different driving in São Paulo or in Rio de Janeiro. And truck drivers, they learn how to drive at different regions. And they learn, I'm sorry, they learn with their experience. No school will teach them that. And the same reasoning may be applied to other professions such as nurses, like elderly caring people, all those services which are considered to be of low skills, and they are not in threat. They will not be threatened by any technologies, even though, we believed that they were less relevant because they didn't have all these educational skills, but they have a lower risk to be replaced by AI. Historically speaking, our societies, they set the value of professional skills. Wealth countries with this current technological revolution, which has been liable for the drainage of the middle class, the vanished of the middle class. Similarly, those countries, they are also suffering with the scarcity of nurses, people who work with healthcare, nannies. These are future professionals that will not be replaced to AI and will still grow a lot. So the question I leave you for food for thought: will those professions be replaced? If that happen, what so? And if those other professionals, such as a caregiver, elderly caregiver, children caregiver, nurses, professions that used to be discriminated because they are mainly carried out by women, and we believe that just because they are women, they are able to perform care, to be caregiver. Nurses, usually they are immigrants, they come from low-income families, most of them are Black, and believe me or not, this will be professions for the future, and they will change position. briefly, let me talk about the impact that will cause over high school and universities. We say the whole time, well, schools, they have to solve all the problems, teaching to people what they are supposed to learn. But we know that there is a great scarcity in IT. There are few employees working in IT. All the professions related to computer science and IT were the only professions in Brazil that had increased more than the number of students that had graduated in these fields. So these are professions that are growing a lot and we don't have enough people. But it's a mistake to believe that it's just a matter of increasing IT offer. Our first attempt is to say, no, we need to have more kids, more students studying IT, so we can fulfill the gap. No, that is a mistake, because AI is changing all high school levels professions and not just computer science, not just IT, all the previous examples, administration, business, audiovisual, translations, they are occupations that they believe they belong to human sciences. Any strategic investment in preparing a workforce to the new technologies, they should include all areas, human sciences, biological, physics, chemistry. But is that happening in Brazil? Well, I started on a new study and research. I might have some answers within 1 year or 2 years' time, but I believe that's not quite the case. Artificial intelligence, it little penetrates in human sciences, and I believe it's not being taught, which is a problem to be faced. And a second challenge for the school system is that those technologies are technologies which are in an urgent innovation process in such a way that is very difficult to really know which will be the future skills that the market will demand. Well, that will depend where the future will be, if it's within 10, 20, or 40 years. The school process for the workforce is a long process. Today's children, the son of Morgan's son, who is just 10 months old, he will just get into the marketplace maybe in the next not before the next 20 years. So how can we educate a child for a marketplace which we don't have the faintest idea how that market will be within 20 or 30 years? Those professions which are highly impacted by AI technologies, ChatGPT and others, they seem to be great developers. They are replacing developers' work as well. So we cannot really say or tell what to expect from the future, and that is not a trivial problem. I have the feeling that, in fact, general formation, general skills, those less specialized skills will be probably the type of skills that will allow more chance for the future to adapt themselves to the future market scenario. Technical ability, technical skills, they will become obsolete faster than generic ones, such as mathematics, the development of abilities in aesthetics, which you can just acquire throughout arts, or communicational skills when you learn by reading good literature and communicating. And I will close by saying that if on one side it is urgent and is recommended that social sciences schools and journalism, they start offering knowledge about digital technologies, but on the other hand, is equally urgent and important that data science schools and universities, they start offering to their students a background in arts and philosophy. With that, I close and thank you.
Obrigado, professor Álvaro.
Thank you, Professor Álvaro.
Professor Atahualpa, tem seu tempo.
Professor
Boa tarde a
Atahualpa,
todas e todos.
good
Obrigado,
afternoon,
professor Marcelo.
almost good
Fiquei por
evening.
último. É sempre mais difícil, porque muitas coisas que a gente
I
quer
am
dizer,
the last one,
evidentemente, já foram
and
expostas
it's
pelos
very
colegas,
hard
pelo
because
Celino,
most of the things
professora
that we were willing to
Roseli,
say have
pelo
already been
colega Morgan,
brilliantly explained
do
by
professor
all
Álvaro.
the speakers
Então, eu
that
estou muito
came
feliz de estar aqui,
before
assim como a
me.
Roseli,
And
eu
I'm
moro
very
fora do
happy to
Brasil,
be
moro no
here. I
Uruguai,
live
já faz alguns
abroad.
anos
I
também,
live in Uruguai for a couple of years,
novas
where I
tecnologias,
work
né?
with new
E eu queria
technologies over
dialogar
there as
pouco para
well.
começar minha fala, professor,
And
com o que
to
foi dito no
start,
painel anterior
I would like to go
pelo
back to
professor
what has been
Wagner,
said
né? Com
by
relação à situação
Professor Wagner in the
da,
previous panel
da dinamicidade, né?
about the
Do
dynamic
automóvel, essa
mobile
metáfora,
target, that
como
metaphor
dizia
that
aquela
he
música
made.
do Legião Urbana, no futuro não é mais como era
The future
antigamente,
will
né?
no longer
Ou
be
seja,
as it used to
a gente
be
assiste
in the
um
past.
filme de
I
ficção
mean, we
científica
watch a science
que
fiction
foi
movie
produzido nos anos
today,
80,
which was
nos anos
produced
70, e a
in
gente
the
acha
80s,
engraçado,
in the
tá?
70s,
Algumas
and we
coisas.
laugh,
Outro
we
dia eu vi
find it funny.
meme dizendo
The other
que
day I saw
do
a
Exterminador do
meme
Futuro, né, que era o
from the
dia que a
future
máquina
exterminator,
alcançou a
which was the
consciência,
day that
seria
the
dia
machine
24 de
reached
agosto
awareness
de
would be August
2024.
24,
Passou agora há poucos dias.
2024,
Eu não sei
which
se
was like
aconteceu
a couple
ou
of days
não, quem me
ago.
avisou.
I don't know if that happened or
Então,
not. I
quer
was
dizer,
not warned about
eu
that.
lembro,
So I remember
no ano 2013,
in
eu não tinha
2013,
WhatsApp.
I didn't have WhatsApp
Muitos aqui
in my
provavelmente não
phone,
tinham.
as
Em
probably most of you
2019,
did
eu
not
participei
have.
dos
In
debates
2019, I participated
da
at
conferência do
the
centenário da Organização
discussion for
Internacional
the
do Trabalho, da
conference
OIT,
of
em que foi
ITU,
promulgada uma declaração do
where
futuro do
they,
trabalho.
promulgated
Está
a
hoje vigente,
declaration
inclusive.
for
E
the
naquela,
future of
2019,
the
5
work.
anos,
And
paradigma
5 years
do que era o
ago,
futuro do trabalho,
a
né, da
paradigm
automação, que
what
foi aqui
would
colocada
be the
pelo
future
professor Álvaro,
of the work by
o paradigma da
automation.
robótica mecânica.
We have robotics,
Nós
mechanic,
falávamos nessa divisão, do blue work, do
and the
white
division
work.
between
Quer dizer,
the white and
pensava
blue
que
collar work,
a substituição, o displacement ocorreria em
the
profissões,
displacement
mas, digamos, entre
would
aspas,
take place in some
braçais,
professions,
trabalho mais
but more
físico,
those that would have more
que a gente
physical
está vendo
work.
hoje.
But it's exactly the
Trago um dado
opposite
aqui que
that we
saiu
see
faz mais ou
today.
menos umas 2 semanas, de relatório da OIT, juntamente com o Banco Interamericano
A
de
OIT
Desenvolvimento
reported
da
together
América
with the
Latina.
BID, the Development
Parecido com o que o
Economic
professor Marcelo
Bank,
apresentou
to the Latin
na
America,
provocação no início do
similar to
debate,
what was
falando
presented
sobre
here
o
before
impacto, o
by
possível impacto
Professor Marcelo,
da
talking
inteligência
about the
artificial
impact
generativa
of
na América
generative
Latina.
AI in
Ele
Latin
aponta uma
America.
tendência de que entre
And there is a trend
26 a
between
38%
that around
dos empregos
26 to
em certas
30% of
medidas serão
all jobs at
impactados.
some extent will be
Aí a gente se
impacted.
pergunta, como já foi
And
colocado
then
aqui pelo
we ask,
professor Morgan,
as Professor Morgan
mas
has
quais serão essas profissões?
said, and
Em
what
2016
will be
saiu
those professions?
conhecido
In
estudo
2016,
de
it was
Oxford,
published
também
by
com
the
apresentando uma
University of
fórmula,
Oxford,
destacando
showing
o
a
percentual de
formula
possibilidade de que aquela
pointing out
determinada
the
profissão
percentage
fosse
of
suscetível de ser
possibility of a
substituída por
certain
processos
profession
de
to be
automação.
replaced by the automation,
Esse
by the
ranqueamento
automated
mudou.
process. And this rank
Nós vimos agora, o
has
professor também
changed.
colocou,
It's no
ano
longer
passado,
the same.
uma greve de roteiristas de Hollywood.
Last year in
Os
Hollywood,
atores hoje em dia estão
authors,
preocupados
they were
com
on
a possibilidade
strike,
de que se crie
and they are
avatar,
also
né,
concerned
a
about
imagem e
the
semelhança daquele
creation
ator,
of
até mesmo atores
avatar
que já
that will
não
be
estão
the
mais aqui,
same image
podem
of that
participar
person. Even actors that
dos
had
filmes.
passed away that
Então,
can,
a pergunta
kind
é,
of
como
reborn
que
and
nós podemos
participate on a
estabelecer
film. How
regulações
can we then define
eficazes
effective regulations
para
to
compreender fenômeno que está
understand
em
a
mudança?
phenomenon which
Nós
is
temos
under
uma
constant
altíssima
change?
possibilidade
There is a
de
great
passar por
likelihood
processos da
to
chamada
go through processes
obsolescência
of the
precoce da
so-called
regulação. Ou seja, a gente
early
constrói,
obsolescence
debate,
of the
aprova instrumento, seja
democracy.
ele
We
internacional,
approve an
seja ele um
instrument, being
instrumento
that
nacional,
international
uma
or
legislação, uma
national, a
regulação. E
legislation,
daqui a 2
you
anos, daqui
name
a
it.
5 anos,
And how about the the next 2 or 5 years? How are we going to have institutional and governance indicators and mechanisms to allow monitoring? And that's exactly one of the challenges that OBIA has ahead, which is not just implementing a national plan, but also a possible regulation that is still under discussion. I have been following that discussion. And to sum up,
será que as legislações são suficientes para regular?
Are legislations enough to work as a regulatory indicator in the workforce, in the workplace, I mean?
Uma dimensão de proteção de princípios que foram aqui elencados.
It's important to have a algorithmic transparency, explicability, and the non-discrimination.
Utilizados por inteligência artificial, em que nós já estamos observando
systems of recruitment, because we've seen a number of biases, especially young,
negros,
Black people, women, people with small kids, depending on where they've studied. And the impact's different according to each activity, its job. How can the regulation address the complexity of the phenomena? This is the question we have to ask ourselves. At the same time, it's important to understand that these regulations have to be in sync and connected with some specific landmarks, such as the ones we've heard before, and the principle of data protection, privacy, and the re-signification of rights. I would like to tell you that there is a great likelihood that regulations are not enough to meet our needs. So we have to understand the micro-regulatory efforts, how this is going to affect each and every industry. I've carried out a research study on how this is impacting collective bargaining. I came across a study where I found a professional category who got together and could limit data collected by the system, a system of algorithm management with monitoring, just for the purpose of health and for practical reasons. And this category of workers,
jogadores de basquete da NBA.
Basketball players of NBA. In 2015, they had a collective bargaining negotiation which ensured the right of not using data, for example, for heartbeat, glucose levels, for salary negotiations. Data can only be used for static purposes and health and safety purposes. So you can see high-performance sports serve as an example of the application of new technology for monitoring purposes. NBA has this clause, and the data cannot be used for salary negotiations. The same has been done for baseball players, for football players, and so on and so forth. It can serve as an example for other professional categories to discuss the impact that algorithm management will have on their lives. In Spain, a union has created a manual for collective bargain negotiation. In Italy, the same mapping has been done. And now here in Brazil, in our region, there is a movement of workers trying to pay attention to these impacts, to negotiate that. There are supermarkets in Japan that monitor whether employees are laughing or not, or smiling. There is georeferencing using the badge to make sure that the person is at the right working station or whether it's talking in a different working station, mapping and assessment based on metadata and the use of emails. This is happening in banking. I was teaching a class at the
chileno falou, "Mas eles estão sendo monitorados."
Labor
Mas
International
você sabe que está sendo
Organization
monitorado.
and said, well, I've been
É
monitoring. He
algo,
said,
né,
good, at least
chamado
you
right
know.
to know.
Knowing
Mas
is good. It's
o
the
direito
right to
básico da
know, right?
transparência
Basic
algorítmica é
right
saber
of
que está sendo monitorado.
transparency. Know that
Mas
you
e
are
o
being
critério
monitored.
utilizado para
But what
avaliação
is the
com base na coleta
criteria
desses
to
dados?
assess based on
Na Itália
data
tem caso de
collection?
negociação
In
coletiva
Italy, there is a
em que
case of collective
aquele dado,
bargaining,
aqueles dados do trabalhador
and
só
the
tem
data
que ser acessados
of
por
the
humano.
workers are only accessed
E
by
quando
humans.
a pessoa da empresa vai acessar o dado,
And when the person is accessing data,
o representante do sindicato
the
recebe uma
representative
mensagem e fica
of
sabendo
the workers' union
que o
get a
APCL
message.
avaliado.
Your
Tá
data
relacionado ao
is
princípio
being
da centralidade
accessed.
humana,
So it's the
do
principle of
humano no
human
comando,
centrality,
que é
of having
princípio que
human
foi, inclusive,
in
reconhecido
control,
na
which is a
declaração da OIT
principle
que citei agora, de
recognized in
2019,
the
na
Organization
Regulação
of
Geral de Proteção de Dados
Labor
da União
International
Europeia, assim como
Organization,
no AA Act da União Europeia,
and the
que agora
AA
foi
Act
chamado
of
efeito
the
Bruxelas.
European Union,
Nós
which is
vemos
the
que tem
so-called
influenciado
Brussels
as regulações e as
effect, which
legislações
has been
aqui nos nossos
impacting
países. Então, eu queria
regulations in
só
other
encerrar essa
countries.
reflexão, né, para dizer que nós estamos andando,
We
sempre correndo
are
atrás,
really
mas não podemos
working,
deixar de buscar
always
esse
trying to
não
find
lugar, né, e o
answers,
não lugar
but we have
conhecido como
to
a chamada
find,
utopia, tá? Para
maybe,
finalizar, queria
yes,
fazer
there is an
um
utopia, but
queixo,
we have to at
né,
least to
do
walk
escritor
towards that.
uruguaio, já que eu vim do Uruguai,
I would
né,
like
Eduardo
to
Galeano, que se
quote
refere a um
Eduardo
cineasta que
Galeano,
perguntam a ele, se não fosse
Uruguayan
nós que estamos
writer.
aqui conversando com o público,
They were
e
talking, it
perguntaram
was
para o
an
cineasta
interview, and
chamado
somebody
Fernando Pinto,
asked
ao solista,
to
o que
the
é a
movie
utopia.
maker Bury, and he said, what is
E
utopia?
aí o cineasta
And the movie
respondeu,
maker
Fernando Pinto,
said,
a utopia
utopia
é o seguinte, eu
is the
caminho
following.
passo
I take
e ela
one
se
step,
afasta passo.
and it gets
Eu
far
caminho
one
10
step
passos
further. If I
e
walk
ela se
10
afasta
steps,
10 passos.
utopia takes 10
Eu caminho
steps
100
further.
passos e ela
If
se
I
afasta
take
100
100
passos. Para
steps,
que
it will
serve a
take 100
utopia?
steps more than me.
Serve para
What's the
caminhar.
use of utopia? It's to
Obrigado.
keep on walking. That's the use of utopia. Let's keep on walking.
Obrigado, Atahualpa.
Thank you.
Nós podemos abrir para alguma
I think
questão
we
que alguém
have
queira
time
fazer.
for one or two
Por favor,
questions,
só peço para as questões para que
but
faça uma questão
please
breve.
be
Nós
brief.
esgotamos
Our
o tempo
time is up.
e ela pode ser direcionada ou pode ser geral. Por favor.
Boa tarde, André
Good
Fernandes
afternoon.
aqui.
I'm André
Tive a
Fernandes.
oportunidade de palestrar no evento no Seminário de Proteção de Dados ontem.
I spoke yesterday in the data protection
muito feliz de
seminar.
ouvir
I was very glad to hear some critical perspectives being brought on the
Hoje a gente
topic.
teve uma audiência pública lá
Today
no
there was a
Senado Federal,
public hearing in the
relativa ao
Brazilian
PL
Senate
3318, que
concerning
hoje é o
the
projeto
new
mais abrangente que a gente tem para
bill of law, the broader one to regulate AI in Brazil. It was a public hearing just to give really one perspective of all of the perspectives. And panelists were saying regulation is an impediment to innovation. And I would like to ask you, do you think AI regulation is an impediment to development? Is it a real trade-off or it's just
Se aceita que o
fallacy?
moderador responda,
Can the moderator answer that?
aí eu responderia com uma pergunta. Você,
I would start by
colocando
asking you
você
a question.
simbolicamente, poderia elencar outra
Could you
tecnologia
list
que
any
não é
other
regulada,
technology which is not
não
regulated?
seja regulada, né? Ou seja, é uma falácia, na minha
So
opinião.
it's a fallacy,
Posso
in my
também fazer
opinion.
uma reflexão breve?
Let me
Tem
make a brief
história,
comment.
eu não sei se é verdade, mas a história é boa. Isso que importa,
The
né?
story is quite
Diz
good.
que o Henry Ford estava com
Henry
um
Ford
sindicalista, né, nos
was
Estados Unidos,
with
ele entra lá na
a
fábrica e mostra
union
o processo de
leader, the
automação
plant, and he
da
showed the
construção dos
automation
automóveis, né?
process,
E aí
building
ele pega e fala
the
pro
first cars,
sindicalista, ó,
and he
daqui a
told
pouco,
the
vocês não vão
union
mais
worker,
ter,
you see, maybe
né,
you
não
won't
vão
have
mais
that much
existir,
job
eu não vou precisar de
soon
trabalhadores aqui para...
because I will need fewer
E aí o
workers.
sindicalista olha para ele e
And the
fala, e
union
quem
trader
vai
said,
comprar o
well,
carro?
who's going to buy the car?
Porque se não há trabalho,
Because if there is no work,
não há... Ou seja,
there is no
não há
buyer,
consumo, não há...
there is
Como
no
a gente vai trabalhar
consumption. How
talvez
are
numa
we
ensaio de
going
uma sociedade pós-trabalho,
to work in a
né, que se fala agora,
post,
sei lá, de uma renda básica
how are we going to deal
universal,
with
quer
a
dizer,
post-work
assim,
society? It doesn't
é preciso
exist,
tomar
right?
consciência
We have to be
de
aware
que
of the
tudo na
fact
vida tem
that
limites.
everything in
Eu
life
acho
has
que é uma
limits.
obviedade aqui.
It's
Ou seja, a
obvious, right? It goes
inovação,
without saying.
ok, mas ela tem que
Yes,
até para
innovation is fine,
não haja um
but
efeito bumerangue.
it has limits.
Que ela não gere situações que possam
It
prejudicar
shouldn't generate situations
própria
that
continuidade da
will
evolução.
eventually
Então,
impact its own
claro que nós sabemos
evolution.
que esses debates
We
eles não
know
envolvem só
that
uma questão
these
conceitual,
discussions do not
eles envolvem
involve only
interesses
the
também
conceptual
econômicos,
discussion. It
políticos,
involves also
etc.
political,
Nós temos que ficar
economic
atentos a isso
interests.
e faz
We
parte da
have to pay
democracia
close attention.
nós
It's part
criarmos
of democracy,
para que
isn't it?
todos
Creating
esses atores possam
mechanisms
dialogar. E
so
claro que
that
nós
all
sabemos que há
players can
disparidade de
dialogue and
forças,
interact. Yes, there is a
de
discrepancy
insuficiência de
of
determinados setores,
strength,
mas é
of
fundamental,
position, but
colega, que haja uma consciência com relação a isso. Então,
we should be
a
aware of
limitação
this
muitas vezes
fact.
não é algo pensado com base no curto prazo, sim algo
Limitation is
pensado
not
para que a
think
própria
in the
inovação
short
possa
term,
avançar.
but something that would also
Queria
allow
também
innovation
jogar
to
uma
take
provocação
place.
aqui. É,
Let me make a
primeiro,
contribution.
inovação. A
First,
palavra sempre
innovation.
me incomoda muito,
This is a word that bothers me
porque ela já vem marcada. O
because
que
it's
é e o que
already
não é
labeled.
inovação.
What is and what is not innovation?
Então a gente tem que pensar nisso.
This is something that we have to
Inovação
think
vem com uma
about.
cartilha.
Innovation
Inovação é
has
isso.
a
Que vai me
manual
dar
in itself.
determinado
It's an
resultado
innovation
e
that's
que
going to
vai me
produce so-and-so
resultar para
result,
alguns,
which is going to be
lucratividade.
to a few, especially if we talk about profitability.
Outras, não é?
There are
Outras
other
tecnologias
technologies,
que são
of course,
usadas pela população
which are used by the
e que
population,
não têm esse lugar da inovação e que resolvem
which are
muitos
not
problemas.
necessarily innovative and solve so many
Outra
problems.
questão diz respeito a essa
The
ideia
other issue
de
concerns
que
the fact
uma
that
lei, uma regulação
a law
impede
or a
o
regulation
livre
would
desenvolvimento do
prevent
conhecimento.
free
Isso é outra
development of
falácia,
knowledge.
muito
This is also a
marcada pelo
fallacy. This
viés
is
de
fake,
classe,
which
não é?
is based on the
Porque
class bias.
o conhecimento ele não está
Knowledge
solto, né?
is not
Nós todos
out in the
somos
world.
produtores de conhecimento.
We are
Todo
all
dia. E que o meu
knowledge
conhecimento vale, o
producers.
que o conhecimento do pedreiro,
My
como disse o nosso
knowledge
colega,
is as
vale.
important as that of the brick and mortar workers'
Então, eu
knowledge.
acho que a ciência, a produção
Science,
sistemática, a
systematic
sistematização desse conhecimento
production
para
of knowledge
finalidades,
for specific
então a gente
purposes
entende. Você faz o quê,
is
Roseli?
important.
Eu
So what do you do,
estudo a
Rosalie?
comunicação. Bom,
I
não sei,
study
não sei
communication,
dinheiro,
but
não sei
well, you're not
nada, né?
making money, so it's
Só fica
useless, right?
falando. Tá bom. Então, é essa a compreensão que nós
This is
temos.
the kind of understanding that we have as a society,
Então, eu
and
acho
this is what
muito
has to change.
complicado. É claro que o que nós vamos regular, o que vamos
What will be
regulamentar.
regulated?
Qual é a nossa perspectiva?
What is
Eu acho
our
que é por isso
perspective?
que tem que haver as
And this is
discussões,
why discussions
uma
have to take
perspectiva da
place.
democracia,
It's
ampliação do
democracy,
conhecimento, da
expansion of
privacidade.
knowledge,
Agora, os instrumentos para
but
se fazer
the
essa regulação não
tools
são fáceis. É
to
verdade.
come
porque
up
a
with
coisa
regulation
anda, caminha
are
rápido, mas
not
caminha
easy
rápido
because
por quê?
things move ahead so fast, but why?
Eu acho que tem uma mística de que a coisa não se
We tend to
segura.
believe
Isso é uma
that
mentira.
things cannot
Segura
be
sim, porque os
supported.
principais
And I think it's
cientistas estão
wrong.
trabalhando
I think
para as grandes
most scientists
empresas
are
que
working
monopolizam
for
esse conhecimento.
large companies that simply
E o
hold
ritmo é
knowledge.
imposto por eles.
And the pace is determined by them,
conhecimento.
by the company, not by knowledge.
Então, eu acho que a gente tem que problematizar mais essa questão.
I think we have to bring
Ou não é?
these
Eu acho que
topics
tem
for
coisas
discussion.
pra
It's
gente
not
pensar.
yes or
Por
no.
que
There
nós
is a fine line there.
entramos nesse negócio? Vai
Why are we going
regulamentar
into that?
a
Oh,
desinformação.
it's
O
going to
Google vem em primeira
regulate
página assim, olha,
disinformation.
isso é
And Google
censura.
says this is censorship.
Censura?
Is it
Será?
really censorship?
Será que a lógica da desinformação
The logics
da
of
fake news não é a
disinformation
lógica
and
do
fake
negócio?
news, isn't
De
it the
chamar a
logics
atenção?
of the business of
Não está
attracting
na
more
lógica
attention?
do negócio?
Isn't it within its own logic?
Por que a gente não pensa nessas coisas?
Why don't we think
Por isso que eu
like
acho
that?
que regulamentar
And this
a
is
partir
why
da
I think
perspectiva do
regulate
trabalho
based on the
resolve todas
perspective
essas-
of work
é uma
would
coisa mais,
solve all
né,
these issues. It would be something more
objetiva,
objective,
palpável para a
straightforward,
maioria da
and
população.
palpable to most of the population.
Obrigado, professor. Mas essa é uma questão muito dita. Parlamentar fez exatamente essa
A
pergunta para
congressman
mim, que está
asked
participando
exactly the same
desse debate.
question.
Bom, mas acho que foi bem respondido.
Was well
favor.
answered, I guess.
Boa tarde. Primeiro, parabenizar e agradecer todo o painel, todo evento.
First, I'd like to congratulate the whole panel. And my name is Gabriel. I am a technological developer, and I work in innovation, especially in the United States, but not only. It's not a debate about the future of the marketplace, but about the present. Will AI replace my work or not? And many companies, they are already replacing their employees by AI, maybe to use their employees' salary to invest on technology or to buy automation. But not all of them have been very successful, maybe due to financial reasons or others. But in our context in Brazil, if that is taking place abroad, what sort of insights you, with your expertise, can take to our country, take into account all the regulatory aspects like keeping jobs, recruiting, or sacking people? Many companies, they fire their employees, then the AI doesn't work so well, then they hire back the same person, maybe for a cheaper salary, for a lower salary. I don't know what is your reality abroad, maybe. Or over here, no.
A gente vai encerrar nessas perguntas
So
que estão aí.
this will be the last questions, okay? Because we have to close.
E aí encerramos o painel.
Two more questions and then we have to close the panel, okay?
Oi, boa tarde. Meu nome é Paula. Eu falo aqui como
Hello,
ponto focal da coalizão de
I am Paulo. I am representing the group of artificial intelligence for the coalition that I work for. Professor Roseli, you gave us a very necessary talk about the project of law, the PL. I know that this panel is not for the regulatory aspect of AI. The 2023 decree is being discussed in the Senate, and they talk about workers' protection, and that is a topic which is suffering a lot with the lobby by the big techs and to the industrial sector. That is just a way to show you how the work is always in the center of power disputes, and that could be something to be part of the regulatory future aspects, and that you from the observatory should, watch out that closely. Because we always have, to give extra protection and support to work, not to end up losing what we have achieved so far. Hi, my name is Jonas Cardoso. I am a member of the digital community of artists. I would like to invite you all to think about the following reflection. Think about your work now, today, what you do today, and see how far is AI from your work, your job. What do you think? Are you able to visualize it? We, as digital artists, we are the end of this extreme. We are at the end of this line. AI came very strongly and is putting down all our work. We are losing jobs. AI is not knocking on our door. It's already inside. It's sitting down on our living room, and we have to deal with that every single day. 14 million jobs. There won't be 14 million digital artists. This is just some food for thought. Please reflect upon that everyone's job is, under some level of threat. I am a digital artist and I am feeling and experiencing that every single day. Just take a look at that image, that side face. To everyone, that is just an image. To us, digital artists, it's our income, it's our daily survival. Thank you.
Obrigado, Jonas.
Bom, eu queria colocar o dedo na ferida, porque hoje o modelo econômico,
Today, the economic model, especially by the companies with their advisory boards, the boards, they put additional pressure over the shareholders, executives, businessmen, and they want to get profits at any cost. Companies are becoming bigger, employees, they are working hard, long hours, they are anxious because they are afraid of the technology. So we have to reflect upon those models. If we don't change the model, which is a more humanized model, what generative AI came maybe to make us reflect about who we are as humans. We have to make better use of our wisdom and to break down this cycle, which is not a new cycle. It's a cycle that exists for a while. And those who are into technology and finances, markets, the share stocks, they go down if they have a profit lower than expected. And this is their logics. And they can gain millions, win millions, and we have that feeling, and then we keep on going. We are following the news, and things will keep on happening. We either break the cycle to a more collaborative cycle with more equality, inclusion, where we will find a way to be more humanized with more equality and not to become machines. Because today the decisions are made sometimes as if people were machines, going against a human logics, a human reasoning. That's my 2 cents.
Só para finalizar, né?
And to close,
acho que ponto importante é que estão se construindo mobilizações, né? E é muito interessante o OBIA.
They are creating some mobilizations, and it's nice that OBI is including one of the verticals, the marketplace, which is another point of mobilization, and to discuss the society in face of the transformation. The only thing we know is that no one will be as before the AI wave. Thank you, Professor Morgan, for your participation, Professor Álvaro, Celia Taualvo, Professor Zeli, and you participants. Thank you.
Uma foto aqui, vamos agora para o nosso encerramento. Não temos nenhum outro painel depois.
A picture, we have no other panel after this one.